Welcome to Culture Alchemy, where we do a deep dive into film, TV, music, and the stories and trends lighting up the group chat. We'll talk about what it means, why it matters, and how it shapes us. I'm Antoinette, and I'm joined today by my guest, Pete Bombaci, who's the founder and CEO of GenWell, Canada's human connection movement. Since 2016, Pete has been leading national efforts to educate and empower Canadians around social health, loneliness, and the power of human connection. He's a much sought after speaker, advocate, and former country director for Movember Canada, where he helped raise $142 million for men's health. And I am so honored to have him here today because as we head into this holiday season, I think there's often this idea that it's, of course, a time for joy and connection, but for many people, it can also be a time of deep loneliness. And especially you add in remote work, the pace of city living, and everything that's shifted since the pandemic. And social connection has never felt more important. So that's why I wanted to talk to Pete to help us understand what social health actually is, why it matters, and what we can all do to build more meaningful connection in our everyday lives. So Pete, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Antoinette, I am thrilled to be here with you. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have the chat and share this information with your audience, but more importantly, for you and I to have a good chat about everything human connection.
Love it. Love it. Just FYI, I'm just dropping this in. I did my master's in public policy and law, and then my major research was on loneliness. So treating it as a public policy, yes, I think it's such a huge issue. And I know so many of our listeners, viewers are going to really appreciate all the information you're going to relay today, Pete.
Hey, Antoinette, I want to push back a question to you at the end of this.
Okay.
How policymakers make decisions when they don't even understand the science that we're going to talk about today? Because I think that's a huge issue.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And so that's why I couldn't be more happy that you're here. I know we've got you for a short period of time, not a long time, but it's going to be a very good and a very rich time. So let me dive in and I'll leave some space for you to also take the wheel. Of course, Pete, if you got some questions for me. So let's let the table here for anyone who's not familiar with GenWell. So what is GenWell and what is its mission?
Since 2016, working to educate, empower, and catalyze Canadians around the importance of face-to-face social connection as a proactive step that we can all take for our health, our happiness, our longevity, and for the betterment of society. Ultimately, we've educated people for 50 years that they should eat well, exercise, sleep, water, don't drink too much, and don't smoke. And yet the research now tells us our connections and our social health have a greater impact on our happiness, health, longevity, and on society than all the things that we've educated people on before. It's not a one, it's actually just adding in social connection into all the things that we think of more consciously and intentionally as we move forward in this, crazy world that we're in today.
Wow. Okay. So big mission. Big mission. So, yeah. I mean, you mentioned this. I mean, you just said it, like you punctuated it, this crazy world we're in today. So why do you think this mission is so important today?
Arthur Putnam, in his Bowling Alone book in the 90s, kind of identified that this has been a growing issue since about the 60s. Then we had the pandemic come along, which ripped us out of each other's lives for 2 years. And, although we were growing increasingly disconnected because we lived in the greatest growth era in the history of the world, unfortunately, rather than coming together in that time, we started believing that we need each other. And so the pandemic, the real actualization of this that had been increasing over the last 60 years. And so now we're on the other side of the global pandemic. And unfortunately, when we don't go to the gym for 2 years, going back to the gym doesn't seem so easy. And I think social connection has turned out to be no different. When we did talk to people, we did go to the office, or we didn't go to the gym, grocery store, now we're on the other side of the pandemic. I think people are still struggling to go back to those social norms of the past. some were healthy, no question. There were some relationships, whether they were toxic relationships or maybe we were too socially integrated at times. But what I think we need to understand more than anything, Antoinette, is that we all need human connection to thrive and survive. And some people are leaning away from those connections. Really, what we do in challenging times is to lean in than ever.
Hmm. That's really interesting what you said about the fact that, it's almost counterintuitive. I've heard about this through research on psychology around the central relational paradox. This idea that even though we may be lonely, we might retreat. It may be counterintuitive, but we actually need to do what I'm hearing you say is we actually need to lean in, right? And so you talked about all the different ways that we encourage people in society to look after themselves, whether it's again, physical health, right? Physical fitness, whether it's, different types of performance related, maybe coaching that we might provide for them in the workplace around that performance. But the social piece, that's interesting. We don't always hear people talk about social health the way that I think you're talking about it. So for someone who's saying, what the heck
Yeah.
does he mean by that? Social health. Could you tell us a bit about what that means?
Or really, social health is really the cumulative total of all the interactions that we would have throughout the course of our day. It's deep meaningful connections, it's talking to strangers, really activity that we feel that make us feel seen, valued, belonging, inclusion, community, safety, security, trust. It is all the connections that add up to us feeling like we exist on a planet and that we're not alone here. But I think, your earlier comment, I think is a really important one for us to talk about, which is Dr. Steve Jordan's from University of Toronto, who's one of our scientific advisors. He helped me understand this at the end of the global pandemic, because he said, what we need to understand is when we rip people out of each other's lives for 2 years, the natural inclination for many human beings, for the human condition, is to seek comfort over challenging ourselves to go do something that doesn't always feel so good. And so on the other side of the pandemic, it made it easier. And I still believe there's lots of people out there that are shy of the social connections because it's easy, when in actual fact, to your point, that we need to start leaning into these because now we understand the science, and we have for many years. But because we never shared this with people, because it wasn't part of the curriculum, because workplaces didn't talk about it, it was kind of like your job and it was kind of for you to handle on your own. But what we're waking up to now is that if nobody knows the information, and nobody, whether it's from an individual or a lens, even policy, to your point at the start, if we don't have everybody working towards or in Canada, then we're going to continue to struggle on an individual level to get comfortable with the idea of, okay, I could talk to Antoinette and we could have a conversation. Because, and I'll finish off with this, because we told people for 50 years not to talk to strangers, but we expect people to turn around tomorrow and all of a sudden be happy to talk to anybody. Well, if you tell somebody not to do something for 50 years, it's going to take some time for them to actually change the habits that they've created.
Oh, absolutely. It's absolutely true. I mean, we are talking about this in the, like, off the back of the pandemic, but to your point, this has been going on for decades, right? So that's one of the
Absolutely.
first things I learned is like, don't talk to strangers. Vans, generally avoid them. These things are like,
Right.
right, these things that we tell our youth, and it's ingrained in us. And so that's why I'm kind of excited to have you come on now, because my understanding is that GenWell has a campaign that's coming up that may actually help some of us to maybe lean in a little bit, maybe just a little bit. And so, could you tell us a little bit about National Talk to a Stranger Week, and what's that all about, and how can people get involved?
Well, and I appreciate you bringing it up because it's a really important campaign for us. I believe that Talk to Stranger Week may be the perfect building block for every human being on the planet. And so I'll walk through all the components. So first off, the science that led to this is we did research in Canada show that those who talk to strangers just once a week are up to 3 times happier than those who don't strangers, but as identified, unfortunately, people for years not to do it. When maybe now, as we come out of the global pandemic, this may be the starting point for a lot of people. The research almost also shows, this is UK and US research, it's almost 100% of the time that when we talk to a stranger, both parties are happy that it happened. And the research also tells us that when we talk to a stranger, it increases optimism, trust, happiness, inclusion, belonging, safety, security, sense of community, just about every measure that we as a human being seek and crave as human beings is available to us when we open ourselves to talking to people that look like us, don't look like us, sound like us, don't sound like us, think like us, don't think like us. Because what we really are suffering from in many aspects of the world is the disconnection that makes us fear each other, makes us think that you don't like me or I don't like you. But when we create connection, it results in empathy and compassion and understanding. And so for us, Talk to a Stranger Week is such a critical campaign that can give people the opportunity to actually do something that society told us for 50 years not to do. But when we empower people with the information and we give them a period of time and we give them the permission to actually say, hey, this week, if you've not done it for 50 years, maybe just try it, because the research says you're going to be happier. It's not going to go as bad as you think. And then, hopefully we can inspire more people to say, look, after this week is over, hopefully you'll continue it moving forward.
Oh, I love that. The ripple effect of that is huge.
Absolutely.
Is huge. Absolutely. And I'll just share a little anecdote, because I 100% believe what you're saying is true, that it does actually help people in ways that are so exponential. You don't even recognize it. But I live in a high rise in Toronto's East End. And yesterday, as so many people can relate to, I'm sure, especially around urban dwellers and multi-residential units, I got into the elevator with somebody who lived on my floor. But I didn't recognize this person right away. So you're standing in the elevator with people. Sometimes you live next to them and you don't even realize who these people are. So I've made a conscious effort to try and talk to everybody in the elevator, just saying hello, just starting with that. And this person in the elevator, when we reached for the same button, stopped and paused and actually remembered a conversation I initiated like 6 months ago, and remembered who I was based on that conversation. He's like, I'll never forget it, because we were talking about this very thing, Pete, about the fact that we both got in the elevator 6 months ago to press the same button, not realizing we lived basically 2 apartments down from each other. So to my embarrassment, I said, okay, we've got to take this window to get to know each other. Who are you? And then, how long have you been in the building? And he's been in here years. I've been in here years. And that day, that started the seed of connection. So we started talking about that, about the idea that so many of us don't know each other. And someone offered me an anecdote in the past about, could you go to your neighbor and offer them soup if they were sick? Because if you can do that, it tells me a couple things. One, you know their general state of health. You probably feel comfortable enough to bring them something that they would trust you to offer and they would trust to take. And then also, what kind of soup? Do you know, are they vegetarian? Are they okay with you have to know a lot of intimate things about somebody just to be able to perform that simple act. And so something that used to be so commonplace is something that would just seem unheard of. It's unheard of. And I thought to myself, just because I had that one conversation, it's opened up a whole connection across the floor, because now many of us are now saying hello to each other, and it's changed the atmosphere completely. So I definitely can speak to the importance of leaning into that discomfort and just saying hello to people, and making a stranger into potential acquaintance, and potentially acquaintance into a friend, right? So I couldn't agree more with what you're trying to preach here around just the power of acknowledging other people's humanity. Huge thing.
And I love the way you said that, and acknowledging other people's humanity. Not every one of the connections is going to end up in, a potluck or a wine and cheese night, but we may never know. Your hello to somebody on an elevator or on the street may be the only person that somebody talks to today. And so, we won't be able to measure the impact of this campaign. But if people like you and I go out, I was already a bit of a stranger talker, is how I
Okay.
refer to it. But now I do it more frequent than ever because I now understand the research, and I'm sure you, from your own experience and now having the research, and hopefully everybody listening, they go, oh my gosh, like what a great opportunity to learn whether I need it, because there's people out there, 50 Canadians sitting only on a week. So maybe the person that's saying hello to you, they need connection. But maybe if you're the social one, maybe you can be doing it because you know that you may change somebody's day or maybe somebody's life.
100%. 100%. And I always think about it the way that you've kind of prefaced it is like every relationship has to start with a hello, right? So you think about everyone you've ever met and started with a hello. And okay, I can kind of tell you're giving me an extroverted vibe. Would you consider yourself an extrovert, or where do you sit in that extrovert introvert?
It's so funny. I would say that I'm an extrovert, but even I, after a day, I do deliver a lot of social health workshops. By the end of a 3-hour workshop, I want to go and sit in the car by myself, take a drive, and so I don't know if I'm at the end of those. I'm craving some solitude and some time alone. So I don't know if that makes me an introvert or a tired extrovert, but at the end of the day, no, very few of us go around wanting to be extroverted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding between extroverts and introverts, and who labels himself with one or the other. We all need a balance that works for us, but I'm sure you have extroverts. I have to.
Well, I think I'm similar to you. I do consider myself an extrovert, but increasingly I think I'm kind of leaning into ambiversion because it's contextual. And I agree, if you spend a lot of your time talking for a living,
Absolutely.
solitude is really important. And so I kind of look at the dichotomy as to my battery. My battery in company lasts a lot longer than I think maybe a more introverted person's battery. And I tend to get energy from the interaction and from the outside world. But to your point, this campaign, I think, has given both introverts and extroverts, however they decide to identify, an opportunity to take a simple challenge on for the week. So if someone's sitting there and going, okay, well, that's really easy for you to say, go talk to somebody, but I am really introverted and I really feel this is a big ask for me to go talk to a stranger. How do you advise people who really legitimately maybe have a strong fear of approaching anyone they don't know?
Well, Dr. Gillian Sandstrom, who is likely either her or Nick Epley are the two leading researchers on this subject. Gillian's a born and bred Canadian. She now works over at Sussex University. And Nick Epley is in the US. And in conversations with them, they would suggest that it is as simple as giving it a try. We have the evidence that it makes you happier. It's almost 100% of the time goes well. And what I think the one interpretation I think we need to make clear for people is that the research actually shows it could be a smile or a nod. They talk to a stranger, maybe you and I get into that long conversation on the elevator, but that doesn't mean that that needs to be everybody. It could be a hello. It could be a hi. Have a nice day. You could say it as people are going. And the real beautiful thing about it, Antoinette, is really understanding that there is no commitment when you say hello to a stranger. If you want to just keep walking by, you can do that. Versus if it's your neighbor and you know that if you don't have a conversation with you, they're going to think that you're pissed off at them or that you're avoiding them or whatever. that is actually the beauty of talking to strangers is really there is no risk. It
Mm.
is an opportunity to do it. So I think it's a bit of mindset shift and an understanding of what is the opportunity in talking to
Oh,
strangers.
that's a really insightful reframing, right? Is there is lower risk actually, right? The stakes are lower if you say hello or nod or smile. That's a great way of putting it. And I hope that that's something that we can leave as maybe a call to action for anyone, extroverted, introverted, wherever you sit. Just next week, to try it maybe once, and as you said, maybe there's a muscle that's built. It's just the reps, getting those reps in, and then experimenting and seeing what happens.
It's a little it's it's a little building block. If they do it and it goes well, then they could try it
Mm.
again. And I will tell you that Dr. Jill Sandstrom, who I spoke to last week as we were getting ready for the campaign, she has told me that they have set up research projects. They cannot get people to be mean to strangers. Like literally are trying to get people to be mean. It was in a park was the whole setup, and they could not get a person to naturally be mean to
Mm.
somebody. So they had to change the entire research project. And so that's just the indicator for people like we may think that people are mean or they don't like us, but most of the time it's because we're inside our own heads. And it's because we're not socially connected that we start to convince ourselves that don't like us or that person doesn't like us or I don't like them. When in actual fact, as human beings, we're all decent people. We really do want the best for the world. But when we're as disconnected as we are today, oftentimes we start believing what our heads tell us. And I've been in my head many times, not been very nice to myself. And I'm sure I'm not the
Oh,
only
you're not the
one.
only one. I'm definitely someone as well too that I think that way too. I do. I know there's a lot of people out there amongst our alchemists who listen to this show who will probably relate. These are people that are deeply thoughtful, reflective, introspective, and with that also observant, right? And so probably replaying interactions is something that we can all relate to. But what I do want to do is as we wind down here is I want to thank you for giving all of us, including myself, the challenge to participate next week in National Talk to a Stranger Week. And if anybody is curious about GenWell or wants to get more information about how they can participate in this campaign or maybe other things that GenWell's involved in, where can they find more information about the organization and about you, Pete?
They can go to genwell.ca to find more about the overall Canada's Human Connection movement. But specifically for Talk to Week, they can go to talktoastrangerweek.org. And all we are asking people to do is if you talk to a stranger, come and tell us about it. So I think we ask you three questions. What did you do? Did you smile? Did you talk? Or did you have a conversation? Was it good? Was it okay? Or was it terrible? Because ultimately, what we want to do is continue to provide more information and more research that will help validate for people that this isn't something to fear, but maybe a really opportunity for all of us to build a more connected world where everybody thrives.
Well, I mean, we couldn't ask for more than that, right? If we are just able to say hello at the end of the day, like you said, that alone has a lot of ripple effects. And I want to thank you, Pete, as well, because this has been a really insightful conversation. I hope inspires a lot of people to get out there, get out of their comfort zone, and start getting connected to people. So for everyone listening, I hope this gives you something to think about. And of course, if you enjoyed this conversation, as Pete said, you can find more information at their site, which I will put into our show notes. And of course, I got to put a little plug in for the podcast as well. Please like, subscribe, do all the things that help a podcast grow. And once again, I want to thank you, Pete, for joining me today. And I'm really looking forward to the campaign myself. I'm going to give myself a challenge every day next week to at least say hello to one or two people. I just, at work, we're in a new office space. A lot of us are colliding and I'm seeing new faces that I've been emailing for months without knowing who they are. So I think I'm going to give myself that challenge, especially
Yeah,
in the
totally.
office to do that, to say hello to people and get to know more of my peers. And thank you so much for this conversation.
I, I love it, Antoinette. Thank you for the opportunity to share and to have a dialogue with you. You obviously get it, and you obviously care about the world a better place, and that's why I'm really excited to be on here and have this conversation with you.
Oh, I couldn't be happier. We're having it at a really important time, I think, as you said, in our evolution as humans, but certainly with the holidays coming up, I think a lot of people will appreciate this. And I cannot tell you how many times I've heard people ask, how do you make friends as an adult? And many of our listeners, older millennials, will probably be thinking, how do I make friends? It starts maybe with a hello. So,
Absolutely.
I will definitely take this mission on full force myself next week and every week after that. But I guess that's all the time we have. Wow, time really flies in these conversations. But again, my big thanks, Pete Bombaci, doing amazing work with GenWell. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for everyone for listening today. I hope that you've enjoyed the conversation. Stay tuned for our next show and subscribe so that you know whenever it drops. And until next time, alchemists, stay curious.